Hello and welcome back to the Handstandcast with me, Emmet Lewis, and my co-host, Mikael Christiansen. How's things going, Mikael?
Same as last time. Not bad. I've been folding a lot of paper and I'm very happy about the complete mess that I'm working on right now. So that is grand. Yeah. How about yourself?
I'm pretty good. Just to put it in context, we are about 2 hours late from recording because Mikael was engaged in what he described as the Battle of the Somme with a piece of paper.
Of origami, yes.
Now,
exactly.
He sent me the crease pattern. I don't know if anyone knows any origami, but you get a kind of a map, a piece of paper. I know nothing. And he sent me the piece of paper that basically looked like if you waved it too fast in front of someone, it would probably cause a seizure. And that was the pattern he was working on. So, and now I'm seeing he has basically a Gundam.
Yeah, or like it looks like a what could I say? I don't even know how to describe this mess. I'm sitting here with it in my hand. So basically, it's just like the kind of preform before it looks like anything. And I don't know how many. I actually didn't spend that many hours on actually getting here, which surprises me. But yeah, it's a mess, and it's probably the most complex one I've done possibly ever. So it's going to be interesting to see if I can actually finish it. More on that next time.
Cool. So we are doing our normal kind of Q&A episode in between. I don't know, I suppose the world is kind of burning down at the moment, so might as well answer some questions. We have, if you're listening to this in the future, the Rona is still a thing. We are locked down, and hopefully you're not locked down listening to this, or hopefully you are. Who knows? Anyway, I suppose we get on to our listener questions. Thank you all for sending them in. As usual, if you have questions and want to send them in, please do send them in. On Anchor FM as well, we have someone who sent us in an audio question. We just figured out how to get that working and cut it in and how to actually use Anchor FM. So if you have some audio questions and want to hear your voice on the telly or on the radio or on the podcast, we'll do it. So feel free to use that as well. Okay, first question. I know everyone is different, but what is the timeline to move from a 10-second to a 30-second hold? It feels like it took me a year to build up to a regular 10-second, sometimes 15-second hold, and 30 seconds seems far away right now. Are more wall holds needed?
First, I would say that it's usually faster to go from 10, 15 to 30 because you know what you need to do to balance on your hands. So I would say that the primary thing to do is just like shift perhaps a little bit from a more technically focused training to more kind of conditioning focus. But at the same time, you can just like try to just build a strong handstand practice where you practice moving your legs, practice tuck handstand, practice straddle, and so on. And over time, the 30 will start kind of happening by itself. But I mean, there's nothing wrong with actually, if you're aiming for nailing it, then yeah, start adding in more endurance focused work. What do you say, Emma?
Yeah, I think it's one of these things. It's when you get to the point of being able to do 15 seconds, then it becomes the time to like start critically assessing what actually goes wrong in your balance and then picking your conditioning to suit that. So I'll just run through a few common ones, but there's a lot. It's very variable. But okay, is your forearms and fingers getting tired? Okay, your forearms and fingers getting tired. Well, then is your placement too far forward, so you're squeezing your fingers constantly? Then maybe think about getting the weight slightly further back in the hand. Do you find you just lose your shoulder push and then your elbows bend and then you lose it that way? Well, then you probably need a bit more wall conditioning or a bit of tuck work. Will fix that quickly. And then if you find you ditch it into an arch shape or you just can't balance and correct fast enough, then maybe start working on heel pulls, but more like a strength exercise. It's also a time where like we still do our balance drills, so our heel pulls, our toe pulls, our scissor drills, all of these, but start trying to find more moments of balance where you're choosing to go to balance and then choosing to come out of balance just to train the actual reactive balance capacity. So a few things to try there, but it's once you're breaking 15 seconds, you've done all the hard work on the handstand. It means you know how to balance. It means your joints can take it. So it's generally, you find it does come much, much quicker, particularly if it was quite slow to get to that point.
Yeah, I think that pretty much sums it up.
Here's an interesting one, which this would probably be an episode all in itself, actually. But what happens in the body during and after both acute and long-term handstand?
What happens in the body?
I think so. They're asking someone like, okay, what happens when you go upside down? Is the basic question they're asking, and then what happens if we do a handstand long enough?
I mean, I think the first thing that I think of is that, like, I mean, the pressure of the fluids change quite a lot.
Yeah.
Both acute and over time, and of course more over time, since it has more time to rush all the blood towards your upper body.
Yeah, it's definitely that, and the lymph fluid as well is one of the first things to move. And it's quite interesting. You see this a lot in beginner handstands, and this is one of the long-term adaptations that no one really talks about, is the vascular system adapts to this as well. But you'll see it in beginner balances. We'll get kind of like little burst blood vessels around the face and around the eyes and around the kind of lighter skin. You've seen that a lot, and it goes away and in the eyes and everything from the blood pressure building up. But the body either, I don't know, adapts via tissue adaptation or adapts via circulation, and then that goes away. At the same time, if we think the joints themselves will have a bit of fluid build up in them the same way just warming up would in a workout. Not exactly the mechanism of this, but I can feel it happening myself. Like, I can feel my joints inflate, and I always wear wrist wraps when I'm training, not for the balance, but just for the support. And I can feel it when I put them on. Once I've done my warm up and I'm getting into my heavier sets, I feel my joints are pushing out against it, that I have to loosen the wrap a small amount. So that's always an interesting one.
Yeah, and I think that, like, I mean, how to say, long term. I think I mean, I know people that have stood on their hands for like very, very, very long periods of time. We're talking up to an hour, and I don't think it's particularly comfortable. At least that's what they haven't like, or the way it's been described hasn't exactly been like as if it's the jolliest feeling to come down. But like, essentially what you're doing is just turning your body upside down, and things will be more or less the same as when you're on your feet. Just that, like, yeah, the fluid shift will have then gone on for a longer period of time. And like, I'm not sure how significant other differences there would be, though.
Yeah, there's one interesting one that I see in people who tend to be a bit more hypermobile is, I have no scans of a body to back up what I'm seeing, but you see it in some people's chest shape and their stomach shape, that it looks like they performed a stomach vacuum or a Nowli Kyria, and their organs have been displaced up into their chest. You see people who, like, particularly people who focus on a lot of abdominal withdrawal in this, and you see it. I think Max Sammy D, friend of ours, he has it quite a good bit, and a few other. You see more in high level people who have that hypermobility, but you can see, like, maybe the organs are getting down, and it's one of those interesting things. Like, if we don't really know,
I mean, it would make sense. I mean, they will move to a degree at least. Yeah. So I mean,
and then, like, that will also lower the center of mass. So you see this in some people who are pretty good. Sorry, just choking on my own words there. So these would be acute effects. Now, the long-term effects of doing handstands, that's kind of quite interesting.
Yeah, I'm thinking that, like, speaking of course, one thing is, like, long-term being more like what adaptations happen to the body, and of course you are putting a lot of pressure on the skeleton, so I would assume that, like, the bone density and so on will increase in the bones that you use a lot. The muscles, of course, will strengthen. As we've talked about before, there is kind of like a almost trademark shape to the upper back and shoulders of hand balancers, both because most people on higher levels have similar level of mobility in the shoulders, but also the muscles are kind of built in a similar fashion.
The muscles
just
will
due to
hypertrophy in a hand balance way, I suppose.
Yeah. Just like certain muscles are favored to grow more than others, obviously, because of the work you do. And I guess your sense, like, one thing I've been wondering, though, is like this, because people have often asked me like, "Oh, you are so good at balance. You must be good at balancing like this and like that." I'm like, not really. Like tightrope walking or similar things. Sure, I could do what anyone can do, but like I don't have any specific abilities within it at all, just because I'm good at standing on my hands.
Yeah.
So
I think if we also just look at the research on balance, it's one of these interesting things that balance is very, very context specific. And it's, you know, it's just use myself as an example, say tightrope walking. It's one of those things I'm actually naturally very good at. I'm not naturally very good at most things. But yeah, I could just, you know, I could walk on it first time, easy, could do tricks, walk, turn, juggle, all this stuff. On a slack line, I can't even stand on a slack line. I just fall off it. Like, it's comical to watch. Like, if you put one on one beside each other, or even a slack line or a slack rope, which is a circus discipline, whereas like tightrope, I'll walk up and down and stay on it basically as long as I want most times, unless I make a serious mistake. Slack line, I can't even, my leg just starts shaking and nothing else. I can't even like take a step. Whereas
the funny thing with those two elements as well is like a tightrope. Basically, obviously it's tight, and what you do is you move your body on top of the rope, so you adjust the body on top of this quite solid object, while on the slack line or slack rope, the rope is moving, and you will adjust the rope underneath you by the pressure of the foot to the rope. You'll kind of you'll swing the rope underneath you, similarly to normal handstand versus handstand on ring or straps, where you constantly have to move the ring or move the straps underneath your center of mass. So it has kind of like just a different thing. And I'm not great at balancing on rings. I can do it, but it's a very different thing. And like, if I stay up for a long time on rings, I start, like, when I get shaky on rings, I get afraid because I don't know how to make the large saves on them when I tire in the same way as I can when I do on ground.
Yeah, it's definitely one of these interesting things. And one of the personal one I had when back in my days of everyone who was into bodybuilding in a certain phase has always read this kind of thing of like, if you measure your wrist thickness below that sticky out bones, then you multiply it by some number. It gives you your maximum natural muscularity potential. And so I measured that and thing. And then I during circus school, I did a bit into bodybuilding and aesthetics for aesthetic reasons, I suppose. And aesthetics, not so much anymore. But yeah, so then I'd measure my bone. I was like, oh, this is my maximum muscularity. But then I only really started training handstands properly, like as a bit more serious focus, like towards the end of circus school and the last half of third year, and then onwards after that. And after about a year and a half of like training one arm stuff, I measured my wrist again to find out how much muscle I could gain by whatever formulas I was using. And I gained like 2 centimeters on my wrists on the measurements. My wrist has gotten, and that's meant to be like genetically fixed, whereas like my wrists now, like even today, are quite fat from this. So there's interesting handstand specific adaptation. So if you want to be more jacked, do handstands, I suppose. You can get like
helps to a degree.
How to get natty muscle.
Yeah, you just like your natty, your natty potential increases.
Yeah, and your fake natty potential goes up as well. Yeah, so that's it. It's also, I suppose, it's one of those things that I'd be quite interested in, of dissecting out some hand balancers and just seeing what happens. So far, no one has let me do that, but you know, I can dream. A man can dream. Yeah. So to answer your question, we don't really know, besides the very obvious things of like muscles get bigger and bones get denser. What else happens?
The rest is rambles.
Yeah. Cool. Next question. This is actually a good one. Can you rate the different shapes on 1 and 2 arms by difficulty? You guys are awesome. Thank you. We are awesome. Well, I think so.
Yes, you can. This is one of the things that like people that come from sports are often very interested in this. Like, oh yeah, and of course it's a lot in the circus world as well. Like, this one is harder than that, and like this kind of competitive sense around what's the hardest and who can do what and all that. And yes, to a degree you can, but like there is a very high level of body specificities to these things. You'll find some people that are just absolutely batshit good at certain things because they have some type of physical capacity which suits a certain movement or certain position or whatnot. And then you have others that like will struggle like hell to learn this, even like the easiest version of the same type of thing, just because they are, let's say they're not flexible, or they like, or let's say you want to learn planche, but you're 193 tall. It's going to be a pain in the ass. So I would say that on two arms, most things that are of kind of basic vocabulary, tucks, straddles, pikes, and so on, are like, the pike is usually the hardest, but I know people that learn pike before straight. Then again, like, should we also include like handstand push-up? Is a bent arm handstand harder or easier? It'll also depend if, like,
really depends on.
Like, for example, like you could ask someone who is just like a mega beast at handstand push-ups and ask them to bend their arms. They're gonna chill, while you have people that can do crazy one-arm flags but can't even bend their arms a bit in handstands. So it'll be very, very, very specific.
Yeah, I think I suppose for the most basic way we could rate it is underbalance strength. So how much of your legs are in underbalance. So tuck handstand is harder than a straight handstand in strength demands. Pike handstand is harder than a tuck handstand because it's more leverage in the underbalance direction. Other than that, then it's like, you know, what are we quantifying as hard is one of these things we do have to ask ourselves. Is like, you know, it's difficult. Is a tuck difficult? Is making a tuck handstand look nice difficult? Are we rating things by aesthetics? And these are like, once you can do the shapes, these are the kind of battles you have to face. Is like, oh, I thought my split handstand was flat, and it looks nothing flat, and one leg is twisting out compared to the other side. So it's these things are also very difficult, but they're not rated as difficult because they're not just strength focused. So
yeah, like I think on one arms you can say a little bit more because you do have a larger variation and you actually have like different shoulder positions. So the basic things you can say is that, like, on average, flags are harder than straight one arms. Figas are harder than straight one arms. But then again, like, I know people that can do flags very well, but their legs together shapes are not so good, because it's like a legs together shape will place a lot of demand on the balancing in the hand and the shoulder rigidity in your placement, because you can't move your legs a lot. And you could kind of say that, like, all legs together positions of their respective kinds will be the hardest, because they'll send the center of mass the furthest away from the body, such as a legs together flag, a legs together one arm like straight, or a legs together figa will all be harder than their slightly straddled or straddled variants.
Yeah.
So they'll require a lot more strength and so on, and stability to balance. But in terms of because I was thinking about that many years ago when I was in circus school. Like, I made this kind of like arbitrary, not scoring, but like difficulty system, which I later discarded because it's it'll be very different for different people, as I've said 100 times now, but also just because, like, what's the point? Like, if hand balancing was a sport, then it could be. And I'm sure some people would think it's awesome as a sport until they would see that every single person would be doing exactly the same things. Almost. Yeah. Like, it's like, if you only judge it on difficulty, then you can go and look at sport acrobatics, and they all kick out all our asses anyway.
Those 6-year-old girls are better than you will ever be.
Yep.
Yeah, there's an interesting thing. You just lost my train of thought.
Difficulty
with the shapes, yeah. Just because there's something we talked about before of making like a Final Fantasy style skill tree.
The skill tree, yeah.
I really think that would be I think we really need to get on that. I have it kind of
we totally need to do that. Like,
but just because then, like, there is certain shapes that are entry gates to other shapes, but then they branch off in a completely different direction. A simple thing is like, oh, you want to learn flags on one arm? Well, you got to be able to do a straddle one arm, basically.
Yeah.
Whereas, you know, you could probably never in your life do a flag one arm, but you could learn figa, or you could learn swechka or something like this. So, you know, there's lots of things like that. And I suppose a branching difficulty tree is more applicable than a straight up like linearity to it.
Yeah, we need to get on that skill tree.
Yeah, I have it partly done. I just haven't got it. It's just
yeah, I also drew up something like a while ago, but never actually.
Did you ever see the Final Fantasy X skill tree?
Of course, I played Final Fantasy X a lot.
And you walk around the globe.
It's a sphere system.
Yeah, sphere system was pretty awesome. Or like the Skyrim one was pretty good.
Yeah.
You see, that one was like, oh, you got to put your stats into some various constellations that have branching pathways in themselves. I think there's an app in there.
So just wait, listeners. Like, we're going to make the skill tree. Dun, dun,
dun. Cool. Next question. Views on training towards straddle planche when stuck on flat tuck for basically ever.
How tall are you? And how big is your straddle?
Yeah. These are definitely two things to factor in.
Yep. Like I was thinking of that here the other day. Like, one thing that's kind of miserable with body weight training and referring to things such as planche, handstand push-up, pressing, and so on, like strength movements, is that like in a weightlifting sport, what you do is you put more weight on the plate, and it is like per se more quote unquote impressive. You are stronger because you lift the 60 than the 50. But with body weight skills, one thing you can do is lose weight, which makes it by definition less impressive actually what you're doing. Because like last month I weighed 80 kilos, and now I weigh, like, let's say I would weigh 74. I'm doing the same skill but with 6 kilos less. Like, it's actually, I am doing less work, but it looks more awesome. So it's kind of a scam.
Yeah, it's definitely you definitely nailed it on the head there. Just to give some actual strategy on this one. One of the ones I use for a lot of people who are stuck at this point, or just use it anyway as a progression, is the closed hip straddle planche. So what you will do in this motion is you need to set up, depending on how good your straddle is. If you have a god tier straddle, then you don't need to set up. But for most of us mortals, you'll need to set up kind of raised quite high off the ground, maybe knee height or something like that. You do your tuck planche, set up really nice, make sure to press forward into the lean, make sure your shoulder position is like pulling down and protracted, and then you open your legs downward into basically into 90 degrees with the hips, so you're keeping the flat back, but then your legs are down and open, and this kind of can bridge the gap a lot, because it's not super harder than a flat tuck, but it's infinitely easier than a straddle if it's very difficult for you. So you can kind of get used to that, build up a bit more weight, use that to overcome a barrier, then work on the full straddle itself. Other things to try is just straddle eccentrics, or just if you're training statics for so long, start training some kind of dynamic movement. And I can't remember who it is on someone on YouTube recently, one of the street workout guys or calisthenic guys, who is very good at planche. Who's that guy with the very little lean in the planche? If you can remember.
Can't remember. There's a couple.
Yeah. He's very, very good at planche. Very good. And he posted a video on YouTube. Maybe we'll try and find it for the comments or for the transcript of him 50 different exercises to train planche. And he has a lot of dynamic exercises in there, and it would be worth going away from the statics for some time. Just training dynamics combined with pauses. Very useful, very good to try it in.
Yeah, I think also that planche you referred to, kind of the pike straddle. I remember the gymnastics coach we had in circus school, he would refer to that one as the A, as in the letter A, because you're kind of piking the ass up. And yeah, I use that quite a lot, and it has left me with a kind of a piked planche, sadly, because I'm weak. But yeah, it's a very hard barrier to overcome, and don't let what I said in the beginning about how tall you are and weight basically be the end be all of your planche training forever. But like it is certainly a factor. So I think with stuff like planche, it's very important to actually be realistic, because it
takes a long
past
time.
A certain.
It takes a long time if you're tall.
It takes a long time, and like past a certain level, like it is really hard for some people to actually go substantially further. Usually with a straddle, most people with hard training can get away with it. But like for full planche and stuff like that, I mean, like with everything, the higher up in the kind of hierarchy of difficulty you go, the more like quote unquote talent will start mattering. So like it's just important to remember that like planche is a very, very demanding exercise, and it's kind of like you see on YouTube and Instagram so many people throwing out planches like left and right, but like you never get the actual proportions of people when you look at that.
Those wide angle lenses.
And like on average, like there are taller people that can planche. Like have you seen that I think he's Israeli. Name is Gagi Yatarov or something. He's not the heaviest guy in the world, but I think he's around 180, and he does like busted full planches and multis, and it's nasty. He's super duper good, so it's certainly possible. But like towards the higher echelons in terms of weight and height and stuff, you need to start specializing significantly to be making progress.
There's an interesting point there to be made as well. If you look at all the guys who are busting out sick planches in all the calisthenics, obviously it's quite popular there, but just look around with all their calisthenic crew as well, and there's probably about 20 of them in the background training with them, and none of them have as good a planche. So just
like you will tend to see the guys that can. That is just an important thing to say with that. Like, and I think planche is kind of especially guilty of that, because with handstand, people will be very happy about their handstand and prefer to show their handstand when they can just stand on their hands. While planche is just like, it doesn't have that anti-grav effect as long as you're in some sort of tuck. Like it's only when the straddle comes out, that's when people are kind of proud of it. So also remember that you are building strength, you are learning while you're working on other variations than straddle too.
Cool. Next question. Regarding the press episode, how would you go about correcting an excessive lean, slight arm bending, what you call the egg shape? Depending on my level of exhaustion and the press variation, I find myself implementing one or both on occasion. Actually, most of the time. So, this is a very simple one. You are probably just don't have enough conditioning at the level you're trying to work at, and you need to do more regressions. So it depends on if you just mean if it's a normal press or a stalder. It's basically the same thing. It's like if every single press you do is sloppy on form, you're just working too hard. You need to go back and master some of the earlier progressions. If you are,
at least to a degree. I mean, like because you did mention arm bending there, and that is kind of the one that like has a slight red flag, because something we did talk about also is that like you don't necessarily need a perfect press to be working on it, but like if you are bending your arms, it means you're always caving in and bending the arm at that point where you don't have the strength to keep them straight, and you will keep on doing that, and that will kind of be the pattern you'll build. So earlier progressions is definitely something that you should revisit, and like spending time on quality negatives is something that like basically never goes wrong.
Yeah, definitely on that one. That's basically it, really. It's also like just one thing to add in there. It's it depends on when, like if you're doing a set and 80% of the reps are pretty good and the last 20% are a bit questionable. I'd let you away with that if you're training. Obviously, we train it up, but if from rep 1 it's just a bent arm and excessive lean or bending legs or stuff like that, then it's kind of, okay, you need to work easier. But if it's happening later in the set when you're fatiguing, then it's okay. Then it's, it will get better as you get stronger. Yeah.
Like, to say it like this, there's a difference between fatigue and weakness.
Yeah.
Like, it's a bit brutal, but it's true.
Yeah. What about like if you're just one of these people who just wakes up feeling tired every day?
Oh, then you're me.
Just more pre-workout. If your arm bend disappears when you take pre-workout, then you're just
take
weak.
More. Yeah.
Right. That is all our questions for this week's minisode. I suppose, as usual, if you have more questions, please send them to us on social media, either here with our own accounts or with Handstand Factory. There's also a contact form on the website as well. And there is the option of the audio ones on anchor.fm if you find out where our podcast is hosted there. Other than that, this is me and Mikael signing off, I suppose.
Yes. Cheers.